Welcome back to another episode of Rail Industry Connected. I'm Dan Clark, and thank you for joining us. Sustainability has always been a key theme that we like to talk about on Rail Industry Connected. So the opportunity to speak to some very innovative companies working on various projects across the UK is always welcome. Today, we speak to Polly Gregory from Positive Traction, a company focused on combining its rail industry and renewable energy expertise to reduce carbon emissions on the railways. By modernising diesel locomotives with battery technology and modern control systems, it's aiming to change how rolling stock operates on UK infrastructure. Polly, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. So, very interesting concept that I first managed to see with my own eyes at RSN when you pulled off the magnificent feat of having your diesel locomotive outside Derby Arena. It looked very impressive. Tell us how this came into fruition in the first place and where the inspiration comes from.
So, for those who don't know, um, we have converted a diesel OH into battery power, and it's called the O8E. This idea kind of came from the fact that a few years ago we acquired RMS Locotech. If you're unfamiliar, they're a lease hire company for industrial shunters. And although a lot of them, most of them are functional and out on hire, we recognised that almost like their days were numbered, and the end of diesel is approaching us soon. You know, you've got net zero targets, efforts for decarbonisation, all that sort of stuff that we need to look at, and managing the obsolescence that diesel locomotives present us with the challenge of. And we realised that we were in this possession of this fleet of aging assets. So in order to kind of preserve our own existence in the locomotive lease space, but also kind of fix a bigger problem, we realised that we needed to do something about it. We looked at other options. One of the RMS 08 actually runs off HVO, so that is like kind of like a stepping stone towards looking for something a bit more sustainable. But then we looked at Caterpillar engines and we looked at other solutions, and we kind of settled on batteries. One of our directors, Paul Riley, has a lot of expertise in the renewables sector, so he was like, "Yeah, let's do batteries. It's the future, and it's going to like line us up for whatever's next." You know, battery technology is so rapidly improving every single day. So we thought, right, that's what we need to get on to. And then once we started that, we realised that there was scope for a total overhaul of the vehicle, not only changing the power source, but making it overall more efficient, more safe, improving the visibility of the efficiency, but still keeping it in the same classification. So it still drives like the O8s that people know and love, just a better version, a future-proof version.
We see this quite a lot on passenger trains, don't we? I mean, you look at some of the news that's coming out and you see hydrogen trains being tested, especially in Europe, and battery more so nowadays. You know, there's a lot more battery operated passenger trains that we kind of see in operations, bringing those efficiency in energy as we talked about. But what differences and challenges have you experienced from obviously this is more of a freight perspective to make them
Mhm.
more efficient?
So I suppose the main thing that it is the issue is the obsolescence of it all. Um, it's really difficult. Like with the first one, with the prototype, it was just really difficult to find the parts that we needed, and I think this is going to be um, an issue across the board with all different classes of locomotive. You're going to really start to struggle to source parts that just aren't made anymore. Downtime is going to be longer, maintenance costs are going to be higher, fuel storage costs are going to be higher, and then like that sort of thing. So we needed to look at like managing the obsolescence of it all, whilst also looking at the kind of the net zero climate friendly options, and then also looking at electrification black spots and challenges across the network, because we've seen recently about the Midland Main Line electrification being paused, and there are going to be lots of areas of the network that aren't electrified. Not anytime soon. It's going to be a high cost, and it's going to be an unpractical solution in a lot of smaller yards and sidings and quarries and things like that, where battery can really kind of come into its own, because it's about that balance between retaining the familiarity and the classification and the ease of transition for sites, but fixing the problems and giving a solution to the challenges, and kind of finding the balance between those. And then I suppose in terms of challenges on the battery locomotives, you've still got the same maintenance from the solar bar down, because it's the same class of train. So you're still going to have to do the same kind of usual maintenance tasks. Like we had to overhaul our traction motors on our prototype, because it's just something that you have to do. But we have found that overall the maintenance is going to be nearly halved. So yeah.
It's really positive to hear. I mean, especially you talk about the obsolescence, and I think actually the skill sets to be able to, perform the maintenance on these locomotives as well is essentially going to become a dying art soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
How have you found a battery that's powerful enough to pull as much? Because obviously from a freight perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you're pulling a lot more than you would a passenger train. How have you found something powerful enough to be able to achieve that?
So the main issue that a lot of people face when they're looking at batteries being the power source of something is the fact that they're too big and they're too heavy.
Mm.
Whereas with locomotives, that's not an issue, especially not shunting locomotives where you need that tractive effort. So we've got the space envelope where we took all of the diesel engine out and all of the equipment in the kind of the bonnet area. And we've got massive space for essentially just putting batteries in. And we actually needed to add weight back on because the batteries weren't heavy enough to match the original weight of the O8. And in order to retain a classification, it has to be the same weight.
Right.
So, so for us, it's just a case of how many can we fit in the space that we've got here. We use lithium ferrophosphate batteries, battery modules. They're got a reputation for being practically inert, so there's no risk of combustion like you have with like we hear about lithium ion batteries exploding and stuff like that. There's no risk of that with the ones that we use, because they just don't do it, and people don't use the ones that we use because they're too heavy and they're too big. But for us, that's not an issue. So yeah.
That seems like more of a. It would have been made much more sense to actually address the battery challenge with freight first as a wider industry rather than looking to the passenger. I know there's a lot of passenger services, but
Mm.
as you say, with the weight being the issue, it would have made more sense to operate and try this on a vehicle that could actually store the capacity, as you say. But it's interesting that you've had to add weight to that as well,
Mm.
in order to manage that. So that's fantastic. And you've added modern control systems to the locomotive as well. Has that
Yeah.
helped reduce maintenance, find faults easier, and things like that? I'm guessing that's what's contributed towards halving maintenance time and costs.
Yeah, so like you said, there's a diagnostic system that's integrated into it. There's a massive reduction in maintenance because it was all engine related. The VMI that we've written for the O8E has reduced jobs by 43%. So nearly half of all the tasks that you had to do before no longer exist. So
Right.
that results in a reduction of downtime. And and then we just need to kind of look at innovative modern solutions beyond the power source itself, because that's just kind of one factor.
Mm.
Like we updated the tail marker lights to LED, and we changed the bearings on the rods to a product called Vesconite, which is made in South Africa, and it's basically a plastic, but it's self-lubricating. So one of the issues that a lot of people had before was that oil would drip from the bearings, and
Right.
be a hazard on shop floors. So it's kind of looking at it as from a holistic approach. What is going to make this vehicle more efficient, more safe, last longer, not just kind of ticking a green energy box, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And this is the one thing that I'm kind of confused by, because you make it sound really simple. Like
Mhm.
it's just very straightforward solution. I'm sure there's a lot more technicality behind it than we're kind of talking about here. But why don't you think this has been picked up on a wider scale, especially from a freight perspective?
Um, I know that people have tried to do it before. It's a really difficult question, actually, because for us, obviously, we're doing it because we feel like it's a solution to to a big problem.
Yeah,
I don't know if maybe people are kind of seduced by new technology.
yeah,
Like they think that buying something new and shiny is the answer to all the problems.
yeah.
But we can use what we already have, and we can work with what we know, and just kind of give it a new lease of life. I mean, there is definitely a space, and there's definitely a window for new shiny purpose-built battery locomotives, or dual mode locomotives, especially on the main line. Um, but we already have so many um, things lying around that could just do with this and could benefit
Absolutely.
everybody, because they already know how they function. Um, and I suppose, I mean, it's really difficult because there's so many different tangents and facets to addressing railway issues and net zero issues, that maybe it's just been lost in as a solution in these big companies. They have so many different divisions, and maybe it just was seen as too small a solution. But
Right.
really,
Yeah.
when you look at scaling it up, it can be applied to so many different types of things. It can be applied to mainline locomotives, and you could look at charging the batteries off pantographs or off the third rail. You could look at using it in heavy plant. You could look at it using it in defence. Um, so although it started within '08, to answer your question, I think maybe people just got stuck in the idea that it was just '08s.
Yeah, maybe so. I think you did hit the nail on the head there, though, where sometimes a lot of people just find it easier just to buy new. We've seen
Mm.
that across all rolling stock, really. I mean, we've, practically had entire new fleets being brought out over the last few years, especially from a top perspective. So yeah, it's refreshing to see something like this, that actually you're looking at what we already know and what works well, but making it better and
Mhm.
more efficient. I think that's such a refreshing approach, even though usually the refreshing approach is buying and finding something new. So, what's the reaction been like from the industry with regards to this?
Generally really positive. Obviously, we had some um, hesitancy before we'd kind of been able to prove its worth. Um, More so from people who weren't necessarily in the industry, who like to have a say in the industry but aren't necessarily part of it. And I think, but now people can really see the benefits and the potential of it. Especially we've had it on multiple site trails. It's been to some pretty grueling industrial sites, along with a lot of operating companies, and the feedback that we've had from drivers and shunters themselves has been overall really positive, and I think
Yeah.
that's managed to kind of cement that it is a viable solution and it's not just a gimmick. Especially coming from the mouths of the people who are going to be using them day in, day out. They really like the fact that it's essentially the same. You know, you need a couple of hours to maybe familiarize yourself with it. But in terms of actually operating it and driving it, it's the same controls as before. So it's more about just getting used to the feel and the sound of it being changed. But other than that, yeah, so we're forming a lot of really good connections, really meaningful connections with potential customers, collaborators, organizations, things like that. But we're always looking for more. We're always looking for more people to talk to and bounce off. And yeah, so yeah, it can only get better, really.
Absolutely, and I think it's such a salient point that you touch on there from a training perspective, especially when you bring in new trains. There's hours and hours and hours of training for all the new bits of technology and everything else. But as you say, when you're repurposing, it's still the same locomotive that everyone knows and loves, and but it's just got a few new adaptations to it. So, what are the plans for positive traction going forward, and how do you aim to make this a more widely used locomotive on the UK's railways?
Okay, so we are currently building the first production OAE. That's going to go in over a quarry. And then we are looking at doing some more OAE conversions for customers who already own and operate their own O8s, and they're looking to invest in the future of them and create a more sustainable solution. And then we're also looking at creating a lease fleet of OAEs so people can hire them as opposed to having to own them or find a donor locomotive themselves. Um, I think the main idea for positive traction expanding as a business is to apply the modular design of what we've done to more classes of locomotive. So
Mm.
the way that we've designed it is so that you can apply it to multiple different kinds of uses, and whether it's mainline, whether it's shunting, the idea is that it can be applied. It could be developed so that it is cohesive with charging off third rail, charging off pantograph overhead line electrification, kind of closing those gaps in the kind of discontinuous electrification of the network, where um, other locos can't go without using diesel. Um, and then yeah, and like almost kind of design a dual mode version, um and also create a bit more of a safe kind of solution to sidings, quarries, ports, refineries, all of those kind of smaller, technically lesser used bits of track where the kind of the overhead line or third rail would be incredibly dangerous. So a lot of people walking around, a lot of people on the ground. Um, it seems like a lot more of a risk averse option for those kinds of sites. And then also just to diversify our offerings as a business. So looking into R&D, looking into emerging battery technology, life cycles, things like that, really. So just kind of keeping ourselves at the forefront of battery technology, how it applies to railways, but not just railways, heavy plant, potentially defence, all of those kind of utilizations that really haven't been explored that much as of yet. Hopefully, we can kind of fill that gap in the market.
It's a hell of a lot to go at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, sky's the limit, really, and I think batteries
absolutely.
are the way forward. And with battery technology itself advancing so rapidly, who knows where we're going to be in 10 years' time, but at least you've got the envelope, you've got the space to work with, because let's just take an '08 for an example. You've still got the vehicle, and then in 10 years' time, new batteries are out that are twice as powerful, that have twice the capacity. You just swap them in, and that's the way we've designed it. You can literally just swap a battery pod out with a forklift. So it comes to the end of the battery's lifespan, which is, it's a long time. But if you wanted to upgrade, or if you wanted more power, you just swap it in. So you don't have to do the whole process all over again. But yeah, and then also it opens the door for even more expanse into future proofing. So looking at remote control, looking at automation, all of these sorts of things that are really gonna, keep us at the forefront of modern technology. It's going to be a hell of a lot easier to create an automated locomotive out of one that's already been battery powered, as opposed to something that's not. So yeah.
You've already done the hard work, haven't you? So, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. True sustainability is achieved through adaptability as well, because as you say, these new technologies coming in, you need to make sure that actually when that technology is there to make you more sustainable than you have before, you can easily modify and adapt to meet that demand. So, Polly, where do people go to find out more, and how can they get in touch with you?
So you can send me an email. You can go to our website. Our website is www.positivetraction.co.uk. I'm on all of the social medias, so LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram and a Twitter, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily at the forefront of our marketing campaign. But
But you're there.
we're
That's
there if you want to
that's
reach us
it.
there.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you very much, Polly. That's greatly appreciated. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That was Polly Gregory of Positive Traction. Polly, thanks for sharing a bit of insight about actually how you're doing. I think it demonstrates that you've got companies out there that aren't doing this thing from a sustainability point of view because it's a tick box exercise, but actually it's something that's the right thing to do, and there's adaptability going forward for that as well. Seems a really simple solution when Polly puts it in the way she does. But obviously they've got a proven product. It's out there in the market now, and companies are buying it. So something that we'll be seeing on our railways a lot further down the line. So thank you, Polly, for joining us, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Rail Industry Connected. You can view past and future episodes of Rail Industry Connected on YouTube, or listen to them on your way into work on Spotify. And of course, you can connect with other rail businesses and the industry on www.railindustryconnect.co.uk. Thanks, and see you next time.